Thank you. Sveiki, kaip jaučiatės šiandien, kokia jūsų nuotaika? Tikiuosi, kad jums labai patiko tai, ką girdėjote, ką jau kalbėjo visi tie, kas atėjo šiandien kalbėti kartu su manim. Okay, don't get puzzled. I'm not going to continue speaking Lithuanian, but just to trick you a little bit and get relaxed as well, probably to relax for myself as a little bit. So, my name is Eva, and what I'm going to say to you today, I hope, is going to change your perception of learning a foreign language, whatever language it would be. First, I would like to show you a small clip. I think you've most likely seen it, but let's do it.
Dear President Blatter, colleagues of the Executive Committee, let me speak from my heart.
So, I hear your reactions, a little bit laughing, a little bit probably the ones who've seen it already thought like, okay, he's a Russian man, he has a Russian accent, he sounds funny, and many of those similar thoughts in your head. Well, he might be funny. I don't want to argue about this with you, but I would like to argue on another point. I don't think it's funny that he has an accent. I don't think it's funny that he says, let me speak from my heart. And what I'm going to say to you today is actually, let me speak from my heart. So when learning a language, be it French, German, English, Spanish, Dutch, we must focus on passing knowledge, on passing culture, history, business to other people. It's about communication. The language is a tool that helps you to survive around the globe. And when we think about learning a language, I most likely think that most of you, when first time heard, okay, I have to learn a language at school, it was like, yeah, this is another subject, I have enough to do, I need to learn more. Then, oh my God, this English language, it has like 16 tenses. I would like to stop here because, yeah, 16 tenses, I don't agree with that. If you want to talk with me about this, I'm going to have a discussion afterwards. So then you have it in your head like you have an accent, and then there are those phrases, phrasal verbs, and this is so difficult. What I don't understand, why no one actually ever before learning a language thought like, wow, man, it's great. I'm learning a language. I learned so many new words. I learned so many new phrases. I learned how to pass my knowledge to other people. I can travel around the globe and say what I want. And I will be able to speak from my heart. Why not thinking like this? So let me tell you my experience. And I didn't introduce myself fully from the beginning. Yes, I started to speaking in Lithuanian. Probably you understood. I am from Lithuania. And I can speak 5 languages. 3 of them I've learned, well, a little bit mastered when I was 3 years old, because my father is Russian, my mother is Polish. And, well, obviously I was born in Lithuania, so 3 languages, bam. I started learning English when I was 5. I'm really grateful to my mom, who actually introduced to me English language as a game. This was never a lecture to me at school. This was never something difficult. This was a fun experience. I remember this time when I was coming to play with other kids. We were learning with some notes. We were playing games. We were learning songs. That was so much fun. I've learned about grammar rules, as we speak about them now, only when I got to my secondary school. And, well, I thought this, I didn't find it difficult at all, because my first impression of it being interesting as a game, as a communication tool, I didn't care about the grammar that much. Yes, I've learned it, but that was not the most important thing for me. The funny thing, in my classes, most of the time I got lower grades than my classmates. Guess why? Because when, for example, we had a speaking task, most of us, what we do, we prepare a sheet or spreadsheets to write down what we want to say. Of course, when you're learning your second language, you write it most of the time in your mother tongue, then you translate it, and then your spreadsheets are ready. I didn't do that ever. And, you know, I thought that I was argumenting it like this. If you're stopped on the street, if someone comes to you and asks you in English, like, how can I get from point A to point B? Will you search in your pocket for some paper or something else? Are you going to have at that point something to help you to say a word? Most likely not. So why would you need to prepare like this for your lessons? Grammar is important, but grammar shows you your way to the language. But the language in general is something much more. It's a tool that helps you to communicate with the world. And when we speak about learning a language, it's not only about the grammar, it's also about your voice, it's about your tone, it's about the words, expressions, gestures. Well, also later on I can tell you a funny story. Then once Italian told me I'm doing too much gestures. But this is how I like to express myself, and I find it comfortable for myself. So what I'm trying to say, grammar is only one part of it, and it's the strict one. I'm not saying don't learn it. No, no, no. You have to learn it. But my advice is learn the words, learn the phrases, and then put them in order based on the grammatical formulas. It's going to be much easier. And then you will see it's so easy to just speak from your heart. Another thing I wanted to touch upon is accent. So please raise your hands, whoever felt ashamed of being Russian and speaking with a Russian accent, or whatever accent you may have, if there's some others. Yeah, that's something more or less I expected to see. You know, when I was 17, I moved to the Netherlands to study abroad. And the first day I came there, I was just from school. So my English language, well, you supposed was limited because that was only what I could do when I was learning at school, what I was communicating with my friends, never was exposed to English-speaking environment. I came in that environment and I thought, okay, I think I've learned some wrong English. Because, you know, when I've heard British people speaking, when I've heard Spanish people, Chinese, Indian, like, oh my God, I'm never going to understand what they say. That was such a terrible mess. And then your lecturers, they also are from different corners of the world, so they also have an accent. Can you imagine learning Introduction to International Law with a Greek accent? That was amazing. That was my favorite lecture, by the way. It was so much fun. And you know, when we speak about the British, that's something I wanted to point out. I had this friend, after the Greek classes, everything got better. And then I had this friend in my dorm. He was from Birmingham. And he used to say, Monday. After some time, I gave up. And I was like, okay, can you please explain me what kind of Monday you actually mean? Is this something special? I don't know. And he was like, no, this is just Monday. Monday, how is that related? Then apparently, well, I didn't know, that was my bad, that there are like 30 dialects in England, and this is just one of them. It's a Broomies, and they do not pronounce the O, like in Monday. That was, wow, okay, the world just started running again for me. Speaking about the accents, some interesting thing I've read, there's some research done about when you learn a second language, you probably don't notice, but when you're a child, your voice, the face muscles, the vocal settings, they set up in a certain way. They form in a certain way that is typical for your mother tongue. And if your mother tongue does not have those sounds that might be particular for any other language, you might have a difficulty to pronounce those words when you learn that language. This is, for example, well, the most obvious example with an Asian people, who find difficult to pronounce cluster consonants because they just don't have those sounds like texts, messages, and those S. It's difficult for them to pronounce. And, you know, I don't find that we need to blame them for something or have some bias towards them about this because it's just natural. So why I'm saying this is that you need to be proud of your mother tongue. You need to be proud of who you are and the way you speak. And don't have any hesitation in your head or any bias to stop you from actually communicating with other people. Just speak it from your heart. The last but not least, I'm going to tell you one interesting story that happened to me while learning a language, not English, Dutch. So, as I already said, I was studying in the Netherlands, and I was having a part-time job. This was in McDonald's. Of course, in McDonald's, everyone spoke Dutch around. As being an English speaker, I could be employed only in the kitchen. You can imagine, I wasn't really happy with this. I worked there for some weeks, and I thought, okay, I have to grow somehow out of there. This was a nice job. I had great fun, but I wanted to do something more. And I thought, okay, I need to learn Dutch. For example, to become a cashier, I need to learn Dutch. So, okay, I'll do it. What I did, though, I didn't go to any classes. I never had some extra Dutch classes or something like this. I didn't open any book on Dutch. I went to my colleagues and I said, okay, I want to learn Dutch. Help me with this, please. The surprise at their face, wow. They were like, you want to learn? Like, how do we do? I was like, just translate to me what you say. Talk to me in Dutch. Tell me what this means. Tell me how do you say, like, how much it costs, and so on and so forth. Tell me the phrases. I'll try to repeat. Interpret to me what you say. I was going after them and, listening what they say. And I was trying to guess, okay, what does that word mean? Do I know something similar to this word that might ring a bell to me so I can relate to something? In half a year, I became a cashier. In a month, I was offered a crew trainer's position. Well, it's a nice thing when being a student and having a part-time job and earning some nice money. And, the most important thing, I got friends. That was the nicest experience I could have in my university life, because those Dutch people, I was living in the Netherlands, so I had to be exposed to the Dutch community, and this was the best way. I learned to speak Dutch. I've got Dutch friends. They were so happy that I was eager to learn their language. They were happy to help me, and this was the most important thing I've learned about this. If you want to talk to people, if you want to share your ideas, if you want to travel and learn more about the countries you are in, if you want to learn more about the people, get to meet new friends, maybe family, you need to show them the enthusiasm of learning their language without any hesitation or bias. I believe language is a very strong tool that is a universal key in my mind that opens any doors. So for this reason, leaving everything out, you need to speak from your heart.